Look, I know what you are thinking. Free land in the UK? In 2026? When a semi-detached and slough costs more than a small yacht, and everyone is fighting over properties that still have the original 1970s avionics green bathroom suite. But here is the thing. There are actually places across Britain where land is so cheap, or the incentives are so aggressive, that it is basically like they are handing it over with a please take it bow on top. And no, we are not talking about a boggy field in the middle of nowhere that floods every time someone 3 counties over runs a tap. Well, actually, sometimes we are talking about exactly that. But stay with me, because some of these opportunities are genuinely mental. And if you have ever fantasized about owning your own patch of Britain without selling a kidney or your grandmother's tea set, you will want to hear this. Before we dive in, just a quick reality check. When we say practically giving away land, we mean the prices are suspiciously low, or there are schemes, grants, and incentives that make acquiring property so cheap it feels illegal. Translation: you are still going to pay something, but compared to the eye-watering numbers you see on Rightmove for a 1-bed flat in Zone 7 that is actually in Essex, these deals are going to make you do a double take. And yes, there are catches. There are always catches. Nothing in Britain comes without at least 3 forms to fill out and a vague sense of impending disappointment. But for the right person, with the right vision, and possibly the right wellies, these opportunities could actually change your life, or at least give you a really interesting anecdote for dinner parties. So let us count down 10 UK towns where land is so affordable right now that you will wonder if someone made a typo on the listing. Coming in at number 10, we have Shildon in County Durham. And if you have never heard of it, you are not alone, which is precisely why land here is going for prices that would make a London estate agent weep into their overpriced flat white. Shildon has a population of around 10,000 people, and it is one of those former railway towns that had its heyday when steam engines were the height of technology, and has been quietly existing ever since. The median house price here sits at roughly £120,000, which already sounds like a fever dream if you are used to southern property prices. But land plots, especially on the outskirts, can go for as little as £15,000 to £20,000 for a decent-sized chunk. Yes, you read that right. 20 grand for land in England, not a garden shed in Hackney. Actual land you can build on. Here is what nobody tells you though. Shildon's economy has been flatter than a pancake under a steamroller for decades. The town's unemployment rate hovers around 7%, which is notably higher than the UK average of about 4%. The job market is limited unless you fancy commuting to Darlington or Newcastle, which is doable, but adds that special British flavor of standing on a cold platform waiting for a Northern rail service that may or may not turn up. The median household income clocks in at around £24,000 a year. So we are not exactly talking about a booming economic powerhouse here. But here is the twist. The local council is absolutely desperate to attract new residents and has been offering all sorts of incentives, including reduced planning fees and fast-tracked applications for self-builds. They want people, any people, your people. Picture this. You buy a plot on the edge of town for 18 grand, and you spend another 150,000 building a modest but perfectly nice 3-bed house with solar panels and proper insulation because you are not an idiot and energy bills are mental. You are all in for under £200,000, and you own your home outright. No mortgage, no landlord, no ground rent on some feudal leasehold nonsense. You wake up, make a proper cup of tea, and look out over the Durham countryside, which is genuinely stunning when it is not pissing down with rain, which admittedly is only about 47 days a year. The trade-off. Your nearest Waitrose is a 40-minute drive, and your social life might involve a lot of meaningful conversations with sheep. But if you work remotely, or you are retired, or you just really hate people and crowds, and the constant low-level anxiety of urban living, Shildon might actually be your jam. And if you think 18 grand for land sounds too good to be true, wait until you see what is next. At number 9, we are heading to Ebw Vale in South Wales, a town that has been through more economic upheaval than a contestant on The Apprentice, and somehow keeps getting back up for another round. Ebw Vale's population is around 18,000. This place was booming during the coal and steel days, then got hammered when those industries collapsed, and has spent the last few decades trying to figure out what it wants to be when it grows up. The good news is land here is remarkably cheap. Plots are going for £20,000 to £30,000, sometimes less if you are willing to negotiate or look at parcels that need work. The Welsh government has been backing regeneration projects, and there are grants available for people willing to build eco-friendly homes or start businesses. Here is the data dump. Median house prices in Ebbw Vale are around £140,000, which is already brilliant by UK standards, but buildable land can be acquired for a fraction of that. The unemployment rate has dropped to around 5%, which is pretty decent, though the types of jobs available tend to be in retail, healthcare, and light manufacturing, nothing that will make you rich, but enough to get by. The median household income is roughly £26,000. Crime rates are slightly above the Welsh average, but nothing catastrophic, mostly standard petty theft and the occasional Saturday night dust-up outside the pub. The town got a massive boost when the Ebbw Vale railway line reopened in 2015, connecting it directly to Cardiff in about an hour, which made commuting feasible and brought in a wave of people who could not afford Cardiff prices but wanted Welsh quality of life. But here is the kicker. Ebbw Vale is proper Welsh. You will hear Welsh being spoken in the shops. You will be surrounded by mountains and valleys that look like Middle Earth. And the weather will be wet. Not London damp, not Manchester drizzle, but proper Welsh wet, where the rain comes at you horizontally and seems personally offended by your existence. You will also be living in a town where the high street has seen better days, where Greg's is considered fine dining, and where the nearest city with actual culture, restaurants, and things to do is an hour away by train that will often be delayed. The Welsh government is serious about revitalizing these former industrial towns. And if you get in now with a self-build project, you could genuinely be part of something that works out. Or you could end up with a lovely house in a town that never quite recovers. It is a gamble, but at these land prices, it is a gamble that will not bankrupt you. Number 8 takes us to Merthyr Tydfil, and if Ebbw Vale was proper Wales, Merthyr is Wales with the volume turned up to 11. This is the town that was once the iron capital of the world, absolutely minting money in the 19th century. Then it suffered one of the most brutal economic collapses in British history, and it has been trying to rebuild ever since. The population is around 60,000, so it is not tiny, but land prices here are absolutely bonkers. You can find buildable plots for £25,000 to £35,000, and the local council is so keen on development, they have basically rolled out the red carpet for anyone with planning permission and a pulse. The stats are honestly a bit grim, so let us just rip off the plaster. The median house price is around £130,000. The median household income is about £24,000, which makes Merthyr one of the poorest towns in Wales. Unemployment sits at around 6%, and a lot of the available work is part-time or minimum wage. The town has some of the highest levels of economic inactivity in the UK, meaning a significant chunk of the working-age population is not in work and is not looking for work, often due to long-term health issues or caring responsibilities. Crime rates are higher than you would like, particularly for antisocial behavior and drug-related offenses. So yes, Merthyr has problems. Big ones. But here is what the statistics do not tell you. Merthyr has some of the most breathtaking natural scenery in Britain. You are literally surrounded by the Brecon beacons, with hiking, mountain biking, and outdoor activities that people pay thousands to travel to experience. The sense of community here is strong, the kind of place where neighbors actually talk to each other and look out for each other, which sounds quaint, but is genuinely rare in modern Britain. The Welsh government has been pumping serious money into the area, building new schools, improving transport links, and trying to attract businesses. There is a growing remote work community of people who have realized they can live somewhere beautiful and cheap while earning London salaries from their laptop. And here is the thing. If you buy land for £30,000 and build a house for £150,000, you have a mortgage-free property in one of the most beautiful parts of Britain for less than the deposit on a flat in Brighton. Is it for everyone? Absolutely not. If you need Deliveroo and Pret and a choice of 14 different sourdough bakeries within walking distance, Merthyr will break your heart. If you are worried about employment prospects and you are not remote working or retired, this is genuinely risky. But if you are a bit of a pioneer, if you do not mind being part of a long-term regeneration project that might actually work, and if you value nature and space and community over convenience and urban amenities, Merthyr could be incredible. Plus, you are only 45 minutes from Cardiff when you need a civilization fix, assuming the A470 is not clogged up, which it will be, because it always is. But at these land prices, you can afford to sit in traffic and smile about it. At number 7, we are heading to Barrow-in-Furness in Cumbria. This one is genuinely interesting because it is not your typical struggling former industrial town. Barrow has a functioning economy, mainly because it is home to BAE Systems submarine shipyard, which employs thousands of people building nuclear submarines for the Royal Navy. Population is around 67,000, and here is the odd part. Despite a major employer and a relatively stable job market, land prices are still remarkably low. You can pick up building plots for £30,000 to £40,000, particularly on the outskirts of town or in areas that need a bit of regeneration. Let's look at the numbers. Median house price is around £150,000, which is higher than our previous entries, but still less than half the UK average. Median household income is about £31,000, reflecting the well-paying shipyard jobs. Unemployment is low at around 4%, matching the national average. Crime rates are slightly above average, but not extreme, mostly property crime, and the usual Friday night nonsense. So why is land so cheap if the economy is functioning? Simple. Nobody wants to live here. Barrow is geographically isolated, stuck out on a peninsula at the bottom of Cumbria, surrounded by water on 3 sides and the Lake District fells on the 4th. It is beautiful in a stark, windswept, end-of-the-world kind of way. But it is also remote. Transport is a real factor. The nearest motorway is the M6, which is a good 45 minutes away via winding country roads. Getting to Manchester takes about 2.5 hours. London is at least 5 hours away, and that assumes trains are cooperating. The weather can be brutal, with howling winds off the Irish Sea that will push you sideways if you are not careful. The town itself is functional but not exactly charming, with a high street that has seen better decades and architecture that leans post-war practical rather than picturesque. But here is the trade-off, and it is a big one. If you can work at BAE Systems, or if you work remotely, or if you are retired and do not mind being remote, Barrow offers something rare in the UK: affordable land with real economic stability. You are also right on the doorstep of the Lake District, which many people consider one of the most beautiful places on the planet. You can buy land for £40,000 instead of £400,000, like you would in Windermere or Keswick. Picture building a house with proper views, maybe overlooking the water, with space for a workshop, studio, or a big garden, all for a total investment that would not buy you a parking space in London. The isolation that puts other people off might be exactly what you want. And if you need more people, culture, and decent restaurants, you can save money on mortgage payments and spend it on really nice holidays. Just saying. Number 6 brings us to Stoke-on-Trent. And oh boy, here is where things get properly interesting. Stoke's a city, not a town, with a population of about 250,000, and it was the pottery capital of the world, churning out ceramics that were shipped globally and making serious money. Then globalization happened. Manufacturing moved to places with cheaper labor, and Stoke's economy imploded spectacularly. The result is a city with decent infrastructure, universities, cultural institutions, and land that costs about as much as a second-hand Fiesta. We are talking building plots for 25 to 40,000 pounds in various parts of the city, with some absolutely mental deals in areas that are being regenerated. Here is your data. Median house price in Stoke is around 140,000 pounds, which is already cheap for a city, but land prices have not caught up to the regeneration that is happening. Median household income is about 27,000 pounds. Unemployment sits at around 5%. Crime rates are higher than average, particularly in certain areas, with issues around drug-related crime and antisocial behavior that the city's been fighting for years. The Potteries, as the area is called, has been on just about every most deprived areas list that exists, and the statistics do not make for cheerful reading if you are the nervous type. But here is what has changed in the last few years. Stoke has been the beneficiary of serious regeneration funding, with the city center getting a massive overhaul, new businesses moving in, and HS2 potentially bringing London within 90 minutes, assuming HS2 ever actually gets built, which at this point feels about as likely as Britain getting sensible weather. The city has Keele University and Staffordshire University, bringing in students and a bit of cultural life. There is actual stuff to do here, actual restaurants and bars and theaters and football, because this is a proper city, not a village where the highlight of the week is the mobile library turning up. And the transport links are genuinely good. You are smack in the middle of the country with easy access to Manchester, Birmingham, and the Peak District. The catch, and it is a proper catch, is that you need to be very careful about which bit of Stoke you are buying in. Some areas are genuinely lovely, with beautiful Victorian architecture and community spirit and regeneration happening. Other areas are properly rough, the kind of places where you will get your catalytic converter nicked before you have finished unloading the car, and where the local Facebook group is just people posting Ring doorbell footage of suspicious behavior. Do your research, visit multiple times, talk to locals. Do not just buy the cheapest plot you find without understanding why it is cheap. But if you get it right, you could end up with a self-built house in a city that is actually on the UP, with land that costs less than a decent used car. And if Stoke does manage its comeback, which genuinely seems possible, you will have gotten in at exactly the right time. Or you will have a house in Stoke-on-Trent, which, let us be honest, could go either way. Coming in at number 5 is Middlesbrough. We need to talk about the elephant in the room right away. Middlesbrough has a reputation. It has been at the bottom of various quality of life rankings. It has crime issues. It has economic problems, and it is the kind of place that people from other parts of the country make jokes about without ever actually visiting. But here is the thing, and this is important. Middlesbrough also has some of the cheapest land in the entire country, a genuinely vibrant cultural scene that nobody talks about, and a determination to turn itself around that is actually producing results. The population is around 140,000 people, and you can find buildable land here for 20 to 35,000 pounds, sometimes even less for larger parcels that need clearing or remediation. The stats are, look, they are not great. The median house price is about 125,000 pounds. Median household income is around 25,000 pounds. Unemployment is about 6%, higher than the national average. Crime rates are elevated, particularly for violent crime, and for drug-related offenses, and certain parts of the town have real problems with antisocial behavior. Life expectancy is lower than the UK average. Health outcomes are poor. It has been named one of the worst places to live in Britain by multiple surveys, though those surveys are usually written by people who have never been further north than Watford and who think anywhere without a Gale's Bakery is basically Mordor. But here is what those surveys miss. Middlesbrough has the Middlesbrough Institute of Modern Art, a genuinely world-class contemporary art gallery that would be packed and celebrated if it were in London. It has a revitalized town center with new restaurants and bars opening. Teesside University is bringing in students and energy. It has the Transporter Bridge, which is properly iconic. It is surrounded by stunning countryside, with the North York Moors and the Yorkshire coast within easy reach. The local council has been aggressively pursuing regeneration, offering grants for self-builds, fast-tracking planning applications, and basically begging people to invest in the town. And the people who actually live in Middlesbrough are proud of their town, fiercely loyal, and tired of outsiders writing them off. If you buy land here for £30,000 and build a house, you are looking at total costs that might not even hit £200,000 for a detached property. In what other UK city can you do that? Nowhere. The trade-off is that you are taking a genuine risk. The town might continue its regeneration and become a proper success story, in which case, you will have gotten in at ground level of something special. Or it might not, and you will be living in a town with limited opportunities and ongoing social problems. This is not for everyone. This is not even for most people. But for someone who wants to take a punt on Britain's most misunderstood town, who can work remotely or already has work sorted, and who wants to be part of a community that is fighting for its future, Middlesbrough might be exactly what you are looking for. And at these land prices, it is the kind of gamble you can actually afford to take. At number 4, we are heading to Burnley in Lancashire. This is where the cheap land story starts to make sense in a way that is almost logical. Burnley has a population of around 87,000. It was a proper Lancashire mill town, churning out textiles and getting very rich until the entire textile industry died and Burnley was left holding the bag. The town has been struggling ever since, but here is what is interesting. Burnley is not isolated like Barrow. It is not as economically devastated as Middlesbrough, and it has transport links that actually work. It also has land for sale at prices that sound made up. Plots for £20,000 to £40,000 are common, with some genuine bargains if you are willing to buy something that needs work. Median house price is about £130,000, making Burnley one of the cheapest places to buy property in England. Median household income sits at around £27,000. Unemployment is about 5%, which is actually not bad. Crime rates are mixed, lower than some comparable towns, but with pockets of deprivation, where problems are concentrated. The town has dealt with significant ethnic tensions at various points, which is something you need to be aware of if you are considering moving here. But Burnley also has Burnley Football Club, which punches well above its weight and brings genuine pride and community to the town. It has the Pennines on its doorstep, with proper hiking and scenery. It is 35 minutes from Manchester by train, which suddenly makes commuting viable if you can stomach the journey. Here is the reality check. Burnley High Street is depressing, properly depressing, with empty shops and the kind of pound stores and vape shops that signal economic distress. The town center feels tired and worn down. A lot of the housing stock is old terraced houses that are cheap for a reason, suffering from damp and poor insulation and the kind of maintenance backlog that would make you weep. The weather is typical Lancashire, meaning gray and wet about 70% of the time. But the surrounding countryside is genuinely stunning. The town has character. The locals are friendly once they have decided you are all right. And there is a sense that Burnley has hit rock bottom, and the only way is up. If you build here, you are looking at land costs that are absurdly low compared to anywhere within commuting distance of a major city. You could genuinely build a passive house, something super energy efficient, modern, and comfortable, for less than the cost of a semi-detached in suburban Manchester. You would have space, possibly land for a garden or workshop or whatever you wanted, and you might be mortgage-free or close to it. The gamble is whether Burnley can arrest its decline and start moving in the right direction. The transport link suggests it should be possible. The proximity to Manchester suggests there is potential, but you would be betting on a town that has been losing that bet for decades. It is cheap for a reason. The question is whether that reason matters to you or whether you can see past it to the opportunity underneath. Number 3 takes us to Blackpool. And yes, you read that right. Blackpool, the Vegas of the North, Britain's most famous seaside resort, the place where millions of people have gotten sunburned, drunk, and disappointed. often simultaneously. Blackpool's population is around 140,000, and the town's entire economy is based on tourism. Specifically, tourism from people who cannot afford to go abroad and decide that a week in Blackpool is better than a week at home, which is occasionally true, but often debatable. And here is the wild thing. Land in Blackpool, actual buildable land in a town that attracts 17 million visitors a year, can be bought for £30,000 to £50,000 depending on location. The statistics for Blackpool are, and I cannot stress this enough, absolutely brutal. This is one of the most deprived areas in England. Median house price is around £140,000, but that masks massive variation between seafront properties and inland. Median household income is about £24,000. Unemployment is around 6%. Crime rates are high, particularly for drug offenses and violent crime. Life expectancy is among the lowest in England. Health outcomes are appalling, with high rates of addiction, mental health issues, and chronic disease. The town has acute problems with homelessness, with people being housed in bed and breakfasts and hostels that were meant for tourists. It is a proper mess, and those are just facts. But here is where it gets interesting. Blackpool has infrastructure that most towns would kill for. It has 3 piers, a tower that is properly iconic, a massive conference center, theaters, entertainment venues, and public transport, including Britain's only surviving first-generation tramway. It has direct trains to Manchester and Liverpool. It is on the coast, with actual beaches and sunsets over the Irish Sea that are genuinely beautiful. And the council is absolutely desperate to regenerate, offering incentives for development, particularly for high-quality housing that might attract year-round residents, rather than tourists or transient populations. The opportunity here is genuinely unique. If you could buy land for £40,000 and build a high-spec house, maybe something modern and eco-friendly that stands out from the terrible housing stock that dominates the town, you would have a property in a location that millions of people visit every year. You could rent it on Airbnb during the season and live in it the rest of the year. You could target the conference market with short-term lets. You could just live there and enjoy having the coast and entertainment on your doorstep while paying a fraction of what you would pay in Brighton or Bournemouth. The trade-offs are massive, though. You would be living in a town with serious social problems, where the transient population creates challenges, where the school system struggles, where addiction and poverty are visible daily. This is not a gentle retirement by the sea situation. This is Blackpool. It is loud. It is rough, it is chaotic, and it is cheap for very real reasons. But if you have vision, if you can handle the reality of what Blackpool is, there is a genuine opportunity here that barely exists anywhere else in coastal Britain. At number 2, we have Grimsby in northeast Lincolnshire. If you are not familiar with Grimsby, it is basically Britain's most misunderstood fishing town. It was absolutely crucial to British food security for over a century and has spent the last 40 years being the punchline to jokes from people who have never been there. The population is around 88,000, and this was once the biggest fishing port in the world, landing more fish than anywhere else on the planet, creating wealth, employment, and a proper working-class culture. Then the Cod Wars happened, fishing quotas arrived, and the industry collapsed, taking Grimsby's economy with it. The result is a town with real port infrastructure, good transport links, and land that costs approximately nothing. We are talking £25,000 to £40,000 for buildable plots, with some areas even cheaper if you buy larger parcels. Here is the data, and you should probably sit down. The median house price in Grimsby is around £120,000, making it one of the cheapest places to buy property in England. Median household income is roughly £25,000. Unemployment sits at about 6%. The town has the usual problems of post-industrial decline, areas of deprivation, crime that is higher than average, poor health outcomes, and a high street that has been absolutely battered by online shopping and austerity. Drug-related crime is an issue, and antisocial behavior gets reported. It is not as dangerous as genuinely rough areas, but it is not thriving either. But here is what has changed, and this is crucial. The Grimsby and Immingham Port Complex is the UK's largest port by tonnage, handling massive amounts of cargo, particularly for the offshore wind industry. Grimsby is positioning itself as the UK's renewable energy hub, with Ørsted and other major companies basing operations there. There are real jobs being created, skilled roles in wind turbine manufacturing and maintenance. The transport links are solid. You are 2.5 hours from London by train. You have direct access to major roads, and you are close to Hull, Lincoln, and other regional centers. The town has Grimsby Town Football Club, which gives it identity and community. And the surrounding Lincolnshire countryside is flat, but pleasant, if you like big skies and cycling. If you bought land in Grimsby for £30,000 and built a house, you would be creating an asset in a town that is genuinely trying to reinvent itself around green energy. You would be near the coast, you would have low living costs, and you might be mortgage-free on an income that would barely cover rent in most UK cities. The gamble is whether the renewable energy push actually works out, whether it creates enough prosperity to lift the town, or whether Grimsby remains a place where opportunities are for specialized workers brought in from elsewhere, while locals continue to struggle. The town has genuine potential, but potential and reality are very different things. Grimsby is cheap because it has been struggling for decades. Whether it stops struggling is the question you would be betting your land purchase on. At these prices, though, it is a bet you could actually afford to lose. And finally, at number 1, the place with the absolute cheapest, most available, most aggressively incentivized land in the UK right now is Blaenau Gwent in South Wales. Blaenau Gwent is not technically a town. It is a county borough, but it includes towns like Ebbw Vale, which we mentioned earlier, along with Tredegar, Abertillery, and Bryn Mawr. This area was the absolute heart of the South Wales coal industry, producing the coal that powered the Industrial Revolution and creating enormous wealth, though mostly for people who did not actually live there. When coal died, Blaenau Gwent was left with unemployment, deprivation, and landscapes scarred by mining. The population across the borough is about 70,000, and land here can be acquired for as little as £15,000 to £25,000, sometimes even less, for brownfield sites that need remediation. The statistics are honestly heartbreaking. Blaenau Gwent has been named the most deprived area in Wales multiple times. Median house prices hover around £120,000. Median household income is about £23,000, making it one of the poorest areas in the UK. Unemployment is around 7%. Health outcomes are among the worst in Britain, with high rates of chronic disease, disability, and mental health issues. Life expectancy is significantly below the UK average. The area has problems with substance abuse, with intergenerational unemployment, and with communities that have been economically devastated and have not recovered. It is grim, properly grim.